welcome to the Miracles and Grace podcast. I'm your host, Grace Mayernick Hackett, and today is going to be so fun because we have my sister MillerAnne on the podcast, who is one of my most requested guests. And I did a question box actually asking what y'all wanted to hear from us. I definitely, obviously, want to talk about miracles, and we were just talking about what it's looked like to see miracles in this season of our life, so I'm excited to dive into that. But we had a lot of requested topics that were all over the board that I'm excited to get into today, and think people will learn so much from you. So thanks for coming.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
How about you introduce yourself? I know a lot of people want to hear how you and Parker met. Parker is MillerAnne's husband. They got married May 31st. A fun fact about their wedding anniversary. So their dating anniversary is Crew's birthday, and their wedding anniversary is Bear's birthday, which is just crazy that my two children's birthdays fall on y'all's two anniversaries.
So fun.
Yeah, you might miss some birthday parties in the future, but that's okay.
No. We won't. We'll be there. Yeah, so me and Parker met when I was going into my senior year of high school, and he was going into his freshman year of college. His whole family moved here from Illinois that summer, and a mutual friend actually connected us. He saw this guy out at dinner one night with his family who I grew up with, and at the time he was dating another girl, and Parker went up to him and was like, "Hey dude, we follow each other, like I just moved here, let's hang out." And he was like,
Parker and Connor?
Yes.
Because they were social media friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So then they got connected. Well, they started hanging out, and then Connor and one of his friends told Parker about me. And Parker DM'd me on Instagram, or Parker looked me up on Instagram, and he saw that I had already followed him because someone else had told me about Parker, if that makes sense. Are you following?
Yeah, I'm following.
So then he DM'd me on Instagram. We literally started dating very quickly. We fell in love so fast. But he went off to college, and we just went straight into long distance, and then dated for, about 3 years. And then I still have a year left of college, but he just graduated. So then we dated for 3 years, then got married in this past May. So literally 3 months ago.
Yeah. And then also someone asked a question, something about how did you gain a following? And I think we always pick on Parker because during 2020, when everyone was just bored and making TikToks, he started making TikToks and grew this TikTok following because he is so cute and sweet, and girls just loved him. And so so as they've started dating, or as they were dating and then now are married, they've started doing a little bit of social media, not as a full-time living, a full-time job. But y'all do some social media together. Yeah. And TikTok is such a weird world. I was literally thinking about this last night when we were laying in bed, and I was thinking about doing this podcast today because I have the TikTok app. I don't spend much time on it. I feel like I really want to mindless scroll and I don't have much to do, which does not happen much these days. I'll click on TikTok, but whenever I get on, it's like cult followings of people. Like people who grow a following on TikTok. It's just it's so different than any other social media platform. Yeah. And I was just laughing to myself last night that when we go places, people will stop and ask you and Parker for pictures, and I forget that y'all make TikToks. And they're always the sweetest girls that are we love what y'all stand for and the content that you make, and everything they have to say about y'all is exactly what you would want someone. They just look up to you, and in a world which I would love to also talk about that podcast you listen to.
Oh yeah.
But just in a world where there's so many people that you could look up to, I'm proud of the way that y'all have set yourselves apart, and to see people who are I want to follow you and learn from you in this way is really sweet.
Yeah, thanks for saying that.
And I know that you have gone back and forth. We've just had a lot of conversations about what does it look like to be on social media as a believer. And I know you listened to a podcast on it that you thought was good.
Totally. Yeah, it was going back to the beginning. It was so funny when me and Parker started dating. I followed him thinking that he wouldn't notice because so many other girls followed him. I wasn't shooting my shot. But it's actually been crazy as time has gone on. We kind of started doing it together. I think it was last year, 2 years ago, maybe. And it has been crazy to watch the ways that God has used it. And I think that sounds surprising to say because a lot of believers have a lot of mixed opinions about social media. Mm-hmm. But I also listened to this podcast, and it was the Handlebar podcast about Christians and social media and influencers, or what, if you will. And it was just talking about how, especially the younger generation, everyone's being discipled by something, and not everyone has parents teaching them the truth, or not everyone's plugged into an awesome church, or not everyone's in an awesome youth group. And a lot of people are looking at their phones, and I think as believers, this world of social media, this every technology is only getting more. It's only growing more. And so I think as believers, we need people who are going to step into the space and share the light of Jesus in the darkness. And every time I've prayed about social media, I think I wrestled with it for about the last 8 months, honestly, and just prayed every single day, Lord, if there's purpose in this, will you continue to show me? And the amount of people and things that God has actually sent, it feels like, to confirm it. Like, we have some crazy stories of just ways that girls and guys now desire a godly relationship because of it. And we've seen so much fruit in it. And it's honestly been a huge part of our story. And, like, obviously it's kind of how we met too. So it's super cool to see the ways that God has used it in our relationship, but also the boundaries that come with that of, like, okay, well, if you're going to do this and you're going to commit to it and do be a light in the darkness, it's like you have to set up boundaries to have intentional conversations and make sure that it's not the center of everything, you know?
Totally. Yeah. I was just thinking, I had a conversation with Annabelle about this because I think there's people, me and Michael talked about this on our podcast. Everybody at their core, whether you believe in God or not, longs for joy and peace.
Yeah.
In life. Like, I just think those are core desires of a human. Whether or not you believe they were put in you by God, or if you don't believe in God, maybe not. But, like, I think everyone can agree on that. And I think people see you in Parker, and you see so many toxic and unhealthy relationships out there, and you just see y'all, like, you literally just posted that picture, and I was just smiling scrolling through your Instagram of all the pictures of y'all laughing on your wedding day, because they're so representative of y'all. Like, that's just how you live your lives. They're so encompassing of your joy and your peace, and I think people see that and they want what you have. But where I was going back to, me and Annabelle had a conversation, is like, I think people are called to show that in different ways. I think there will be a lot of people who will be drawn to y'all because they just see the peace and the joy that you have, and they want to know more about where you got it. And then there are some people who are going to resonate when you're, like, straight up preaching and being like, this is what God's showing me in this season, and you're, like, speaking the gospel. And I think God calls different believers into the social media space to have different roles. Some people, it's like they're on Instagram or on TikTok or whatever preaching, and then other people, it's the way that they live their life that's just so set apart that it's a more subtle, you know what I mean?
Totally.
And I think you need both, you know what I mean? But 100%. I think y'all do a great job, and y'all are actually kind of a balance of both.
Thank you. I think that's something also that I've wrestled with too, is like, okay, if God's going to just set this in our lap, because to your question earlier, how did you build a following? Like, I mean, you can talk to anyone in the social media world and they'll be like, if you do this, if you're consistent with this and this and this, you can build your platform. And I think I've wrestled a lot with that too, of just like, you don't want to be self-promoting, you really want to be God-honoring. And I honestly think a lot of it, God has just, like, given to us or just been placed in our lap. It's not like we're, like, statistically speaking, grinding to put out content all the time or whatever.
Yeah, and follow all these guidelines that you're supposed to follow to crush it with the algorithm or whatever.
Right. But something that we both are passionate about is showing people that you can follow Jesus and also have fun. Because I think a lot of kids, one of their biggest stumbling blocks or, like, roadblocks to following Jesus is like, oh, well, my life is over. Like, I'm never going to be able to have anything fun, which is just not true. Like, the when you do life with Jesus, you experience more joy than anyone else in the world, even when you're in a season of hardship or whatever it is. And so I think part of our heart too is to show people that, and that you can date in a godly way and have a really fruitful relationship. It's an uphill battle, but everything that's worthwhile is uphill. You know? And so that is part of our heart behind social media too, and the things that we put out is like, follow us as we follow Jesus, because this is actually where abundant life is found. Like, your life isn't over when you follow Jesus. And the crazy thing about TikTok is, like, you could be on your For You page and you see a funny golf video of a couple, and then you're like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, then you click on their profile and realize, oh my gosh, they're having so much fun together, but they all these other videos also show that they stand for truth. Yeah. You know, so it's like both at the same time, which is great.
Yeah, that's so good. That's a great segue into one of the most requested topic when I did that question box, which I think this is really sweet and cool. And we can definitely share different sides of the coin on this, is so many people were like, can y'all please talk about purity and dating and before marriage? And when you were just mentioning godly dating. And to your point, I think a lot of people feel like, well, if I become a Christian, or if I'm a Christian, I can't have sex, I can't do all these things. And it feels limiting, but it's like, really, it's in living this way that you have freedom and peace and joy, because like, God's not telling you can't do things because he wants to crush your fun and take away all the good things in life from you. It's like, no, those things are actually not good for you. And God knows that, and so that's why he tells us not to do them. But the world spins it where it's like, those are the good and fun things in life. The world tells you that God is taking those things away from you. And it's not true. And I definitely want you and Parker, I want to hear you speak to what that was like for you and Parker.
Yeah, so before me and Parker started dating, I did a deep dive in scripture about what God said about physical boundaries, because, I mean, I always thought, oh, well, it doesn't explicitly say this. But then if you dive into the Greek and Hebrew, the word for sex is porneia, which means any sexual thought or act. So if sexual thoughts are sins outside of marriage, then what would make us think that the actions are not, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
So it kind of had that foundation going into our relationship. But purity, gosh, it's so hard, especially when you're in love and you know that that's who God has for you. Like, I would venture to say to some people, if they're like, yeah, we never struggle with that, but we have this great relationship that's really honoring the Lord, I'm like,
how do you
not struggle with that? Like, we're created to desire it. In fact, in the Bible times, they were getting married at like 14, 15, 16. And now everyone in our culture, not everyone, culture is pushing that we should get married 25, 26, 27, 28, 35, 30s, 40. And obviously, if you don't meet your person till then, it's one thing. But it's like date for 10 years. But we're just constantly fighting this desire that we all have. That's a good desire. Like, it is not a desire to want to have sex, and it is not a bad thing to want to do those things. It's actually really good. It's just not in marriage. So I think one of the biggest things for me and Parker was, first of all, we were not perfect. It was a daily surrender and battle, and I would say one of the biggest things that helped us was accountability. Like, the enemy wants to do everything in his power to keep that sin in the dark, because it can destroy and cause a lot of wounds. Parker had an accountability, especially during engagement. Oh my gosh, it was so hard. He had an accountability little group on Friday mornings where him and two of his friends would meet, and they were all dating or engaged at the time, and they would hold each other accountable. And for guys, that's huge, like, because most of the time guys' desires are stronger than girls. But and then I also had accountability, and it was, if I look back on the seasons of dating and engagement when we were the weakest, it was in the times where I wasn't as consistent with my accountability, and I wasn't as consistent in the word, or and I also think inviting people into that, but then also talking about it together. Like, if Parker wasn't fully on the same page as me, or I wasn't fully on the same page as him, it was going to be a disaster every time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think everything you're saying is so good. There was someone who said, I love that you're talking about the seasons when y'all were weak and you did slip up, because someone said, I'm really struggling because I want that, but I make mistakes and I feel so alone. And I think the solution to that is accountability and having conversations. And I think about, this is a slight pivot, but on the same topic, like, I think part of the reason that people struggle with this so much is because they don't have people to talk to about it, to your point. And, like, I have a friend who went through a season where he was struggling with porn, and he literally had this with his parents, which is really, really cool. And, like, I've never heard of anyone else doing this, but his parents knew that he was struggling because he felt free enough to share that with them, which I'm like, please God, let my kids have that kind of relationship with me. And he literally had a calendar, and every day that he didn't watch that, any day that he didn't watch porn, he would put like a sticker, an X on it. And then he had accountability for when he fell short, but he was always met with grace and no shame.
That's so good.
And yeah, that's what I want with my kids. I keep thinking, am I going to get like flagged for saying the word porn? But I don't think I can get flagged on a podcast.
I don't really know the rules, but it's part of life.
Anyways, so. But I'm like, that's what we are designed to have, and to have people that when you fall short, there's no shame, but there is accountability of like, okay, let's move on. And like, how can we help you not fall into that next time? How can we love you well? But I think sexual sin is such a hard topic to talk about and tackle that a lot of people don't feel like they can talk about it, you know?
Right. And I think that's literally one of the enemy's biggest goals, because it causes so much wounds when it's in the dark. And when me and Parker, or so many wounds, when me and Parker got dinner with our pastor and his wife, something that he told us that was really reframing, especially in engagement, was like, okay, when you are trying to date in a godly way and pursue purity together, when you fall short, reframe your perspective to, oh my gosh, that was so bad, we shouldn't have done that, to, that was actually a good thing, but I'm really sorry that I let it be outside of God's timing for our life. So when that kind of shifted my whole perspective of like, oh my gosh, this is eternal too, you know? And it's not just me that my actions and my sin has consequences for, like, it's also harming the other person.
Yeah.
And that really helped frame my perspective especially in engagement.
Yeah, because the first response is like shame. The second response is so amazing, and then it's like gives you a posture of like, that was an amazing thing. I'm so sorry that it was outside of the context of marriage. Then we're gonna repent, say we're sorry, and move on and release it. I feel like that's something Mom in any season of our life has done such a good job of. In any situation, she's so good about being like, you can either sit and brew on this, or you can remember that you're forgiven and you're free of shame and you get to move on with your life. But you have a choice. And one of them is like living in bondage, and one is living in freedom. And that's a perfect example of like, you could spiral in shame when those things happen, or you can choose to remember that like, all you have to do is talk to God about it, and he makes you clean, and then you're free from it.
Right.
You know, repent and turn the other way and keep going.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely something that should be talked about more.
Yeah.
And I think that's the enemy's goal, is to make us feel shame over it. And that's not God's heart. Yeah. Although he does want us to pursue purity. It's such a delicate balance.
Yeah, on the other side, I feel like I can speak to the flip side of the coin, because we had very different college experiences. And I have touched so briefly on this in multiple episodes, and I really should just do like a whole episode talking about it, because I think a lot of people can relate to this. But there were a couple of questions for you about like, how do you live set apart and make these kind of decisions and be a light in college, or especially if you're in Greek life and partying is all around you. And something about MillerAnne is, even in high school, like, you've always just been set apart, and you have like marched to the beat of your own drum and not cared about what other people think. And you've always had such a strong conviction, and you just carried that with you from high school to college. I'm not saying that it was that makes it easy for you. Like, you still chose the decisions that you chose, and you had the college experience that you did because you made those decisions. But I think more common than not, people waffle in that. Like, I found myself waffling in that, where I was raised with such a strong foundation and I knew truth. But then you go to college, and back to our initial conversation, like, the world tells you all of these things, partying, drinking, boys, like, it's all fun. And you should just go out and, like, college are your free years, go live your life. You have no responsibilities outside of going to class. And that is such a lie. And that gets, I can't even tell you how many people I see get sucked into that, myself included, of like, this is what it looks like to be out of my parents' household and live and have freedom. And you're doing all these things that you think that you're like, I'm independent, I'm a college girl, and they're leading you to the opposite of what true freedom is. They're actually going to lead you to shame and bondage and all these things that just weigh so heavy on you, and anxiety and depression. Because when you start falling, when you are making decisions that aren't what God has for you, like, you just miss out on that peace and joy that we've been talking about. And but the world makes you feel like you're going to find it there, and it's the cool thing. And so when I was in college, on the flip side of the coin from you, I just did not have the same experience that you did. And just, I'm such a big advocate. Like, when people go to college, my biggest piece of advice is always that you are who you surround yourself with. And I'm not blaming any decision I've ever made on anybody but myself. I'm not saying like, oh, my friends made me make these decisions. No, I chose my community and I made decisions that I did. However, I had no accountability. All of it ties together. You know what I mean? I had no accountability. We were all in the same boat. We were all pursuing these things that we thought were fun and going to make us feel free, and like we were on our own and could do whatever we wanted. And it is so toxic. Like, that college culture is so toxic, and it's not going to lead you anywhere where there's life. And honestly, like, everyone that I was around, literally everyone was sleeping around, partying all weekend, partying on weeknights. It was just, it's such a toxic culture. And so, and it weighed on me in a heavy way, but also, like, it's hard to not slip into sin when you have great community and accountability. How much harder are you making it on yourself when no one around you is any sort of accountability? Like, I remember even in seasons where I would be like, I'm going to pursue what I know is good, I would slip back into the same things because that's just what I was around. It's so much easier to fall into sin than it is to pull yourself out of it. I think for me, I also have been in relationships where I was at a place where I really wanted to pursue God. And the other person would be like a Christian, but they wouldn't be as wholeheartedly pursuing God. And so it felt like I was more of like the spiritually strong person in the relationship. And so I look back on some of those seasons and I feel like that person was sitting in a hole and I was trying to pull them out. And it's just a lot easier to get pulled into a hole than to pull someone out of one. And then I would end up in this hole of a place I didn't want to be. But I wasn't, I mean, to use a biblical term, like equally yoked with that person. I was pursuing God more than they were. And that is just never going to end well. Like, if your partner or your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever is not pursuing God like you are, it's just not going to end well, because there has to be accountability in your relationship too. I look back and there were things that I chose to end because I knew I'm in a relationship that's not honoring God. And I had this, thank God for conviction. Like, God's conviction is such a gift. Because I had this conviction, and it wasn't a shame. Like, conviction and shame are different things. But I would be in relationships or in situations where I felt this conviction of like, how do I actively live in sin and pursue a real relationship with God? Like, how do I pray? How do I talk to God at night and pray about things authentically and talk to him and just be like, we're just not going to acknowledge an area of sin that I'm living in. And that can go beyond, that's not sexual sin. Like, that can go with anything.
Totally.
But I look back and I'm like, thank God for his conviction, because that led me to end relationships. And I would just say, if you're listening to this and you resonate with that and you feel that conviction, end the relationship, because it's not going to lead you to life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, like, especially if you've had sex in a relationship, it's even harder to end it, because then you have this emotional tie to that person.
Yeah.
And you really have to remove the emotion and the tie from it and be like, this is not the best for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to make the decision, even though it's really hard,
Mm-hmm.
So I think
That's
we
so
can
good.
speak to different sides of the experience. And then meeting Davey, it was like, one of my biggest green flags for him was that he was like, I do not want to have sex before marriage. And I was like, thank God, me neither. That was like the top of my list once I found him. And we were able to pursue purity before marriage, and it was such a gift. And like, you just don't feel guilt and shame in your relationship. Guilt and shame, or even conviction, which conviction left unaddressed, I think, leads you to feel guilt and shame.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It also probably gave you a much more clear head to be able to actually evaluate the relationship that was at hand, which is the purpose of dating.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, how, if you know your long-term goal is to end up married to someone that's going to be a spiritual leader to you and is also going to be able to pour into your kids spiritually, and they can't do that while you're dating, choosing to marry them anyways. What?
I said GG's, like, good luck.
I've never heard that.
Oh, really?
No, that's probably a Gen Z term. But good luck when you actually start raising a family with them. It's hard enough. Like, it's hard raising a family and in parenting. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm always having to rely on the Lord to give me discernment. I'm like, all right, we're all going to pray for mommy to have more peace and patience. Always more patience.
So good.
Yeah, but if your partner's not doing that when you're dating, it's not that it's not possible when you're married, but that's probably not something you want to gamble on,
Totally. I also think there's so much beauty in the fact that Davey laid that out.
Yes.
And you didn't have to ask questions.
Yes.
And you just knew that that's what his desire was, even in a moment of weakness or something. You knew his number one desire was purity. And I think if you talk to girls now, a lot of girls are like, oh, my boyfriend, like, I really feel strongly about this. I feel this conviction so strongly, especially in sexual purity or sexual sin while pursuing purity. But, like, my boyfriend, he, I feel like I'm dragging him along. I'm like,
you don't have to.
You don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, a lot of girls feel like there's not guys out there who want that. And there are. They're harder to come by, but they're out there.
Maybe not at 16.
Yeah, maybe not
Most
at 16.
of them are not 16, 17, maybe 18. Takes time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But anyways, hopefully that encourages somebody, because we've walked very different roads in that, but I think there's wisdom in learning on both sides.
Totally. Yeah, and saying yes to desiring to be pure in your relationship, I just want to preface, or I guess postface, if that's a word, say afterward, it is an uphill battle. Like, when you are in love and you are trying to chase Jesus together,
it's hard.
Like, it is hard. And that's why I think it takes an army of people around you to invite them into your relationship and do it together.
Yeah.
And also just be wise. Like, if you can't be strong after 7:30 or when you're watching a movie together, like, especially if you're engaged and you see the end in sight, you probably shouldn't watch a movie together. Or, like, if you're above 21 and y'all go on a date and y'all get a drink, like, don't hang out past 9. It's just like, be wise, know your boundaries, talk about it openly, bring things to light. There's so much to be said.
Yeah, it's so good. Okay, well, I'm glad we hit that topic, because that was so highly requested.
Hopefully it's clear.
Yeah. Another thing that I would love to talk about is, and we talked a little bit about this before, but, leading up to y'all getting married, something a lot of people had said that they wanted to hear was just how you're processing everything in our life and in our family, and with Dad's LS diagnosis, and and I can relate to you in a lot of ways, in different ways. we were and I want you to talk about what it's been like the last few months, holding so much joy of preparing to get married and then getting married, while at the same time in such a crazy and hard season of like grieving and processing such a heavy diagnosis. I also can relate to that in that when we lost Davy's mom, it was the same summer that I was pregnant with Crew. So we're anticipating, she didn't get to meet any of our kids, and we were anticipating our first baby, and it was this really sweet and exciting thing. So we lost her like weeks before I had Crew. So the weeks leading up to that were such a mix of grief and excitement and expectation, and that was something that was really hard when I was physically in the hospital having Crew. Like, it was really heavy on Davy. One, just a heaviness of like her not being there to meet him and to know him, but then also he had this fear of loss, of like, what if something happens to you or this baby. So it was such a joyful day, but it was also mixed with so much grief. And so I say all of that to say, in a way, I mean, I'm also expecting my third baby in the midst of this. And like the day that we found out that Dad was diagnosed, I had my first appointment for my pregnancy with Bear. So anyways, I'm in it with you, but I've never done it with a wedding. And I know people were wanting to hear just how your heart has felt the last few months holding both.
Yeah. You know, leading up to your wedding day, it's so joyful and exciting, and you're expecting all things. And me and Parker, you know, I've been dating for so long, and we're engaged for a year and wanted to get married, and there was so much joy and expectancy leading up to that. And then, like you said, the flip side of that was grieving just with Dad's illness. And something that I feel like God taught me a lot in that season of just leading up to our wedding was that good and hard often coexist.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all think good or blissful or good lives equate to bliss and ease. But I quickly learned in that season that a lot of the best good that can come out of things is things that come from hard, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah.
And holding both tensions at the same time was a really hard contrast. And honestly, I think just depending on the day, my heart, my emotions and feelings kind of changed. But also, even after the wedding, I feel like I kind of rode this high from getting married and going on my honeymoon, and then we got back for 2 weeks and then went on a trip with our family, and I felt like I kind of got hit in the face with his diagnosis again. Yeah, reality.
Yeah.
Because I'd just been kind of riding this wave, and then it brought me back to in Auburn. You know, I was in Auburn, our whole family was here, and I wouldn't see our family or see Dad specifically for like a month at a time. Well, then I come home and his disease would, you know, progress a little bit, and it would affect his body, and it would hit me like a truck, and then I would have to process and go back to Auburn, and then a month later I would come back and I would be like, oh my gosh, there it is again. And because I'm not living in it every day, I didn't get to see it and process it as it happened. And so then fast forward to the wedding season, that happened again after our honeymoon. And so it's been a lot of trying to bring things to light. And, you know, Dad told me, I think you talked about this on your podcast with Dad, it makes him feel really loved when we cry. Mm-hmm. And so I've really tried to give myself the freedom to, when I see him and it's really sad, or like when we're doing something as a family that we've always done in the past that he's been a huge part of that he's not doing, give myself the freedom to tell him, this is making me really sad right now.
Yeah.
And I wish so badly that you could be a part of it in the way that you always have been. I think that has been so freeing and also really good, even just for me and Parker's marriage, to say things out loud, like when we come back from being with Mom and Dad and my heart is really heavy and I'm just really sad. It's so unifying for me and him, for me to just call things how they are and bring things to light and be like, that time with my family was really good, but my heart is really sad. I'm mourning this or I'm grieving the loss of this. I know I'm kind of just word vomiting all my feelings in the last 6 months, but if any of that makes sense, it's such a weird contrast of feelings, but I think God uses all of it and produces so much in me. I've seen him produce so much in me and even in my marriage without me realizing it, with the good and hard coexisting at the same time.
Well, that's why there's so many analogies of like the refiner's fire, like making gold and then turning like hard diamonds go through a hard time before they're a diamond, and then you have to prune a plant for it to produce. Like there's so many parallels with just the way the world works, that the hard comes before the fruit that it produces. And something I said to MillerAnne before we started recording was that I have learned and been blessed so much by the people I've had on this podcast. But one of my biggest takeaways on the side of miracles is like just hearing people who have been through indescribable pain be able to speak to having peace and joy in it, and their perspectives. Like, yes, there's really miraculous stories of that God's doing where he's healing people in crazy ways and saving people from crazy things, and I'm so excited to have more of those conversations on this podcast. But I also just have been so, and what my heart needed in this season, and probably why God prompted me to start this when he did, is because I've been the most encouraged by the way that he's shown up for people in their darkest moments, and the peace and the joy that they've experienced in the midst of such deep grief and pain. Because the fact that they can coexist like that is miraculous, and that is only through God's presence. Totally. And God showing up in a situation, 100%. It's the only way you can explain it. Another thing that a lot of people wanted to hear about was just how married life has been. I also feel like we probably have two different sides of the coin for this. Because me and Davey, we talked about this on our podcast. Our first year of marriage was really hard. Honestly, and I said this too, but I really think a lot of it goes back to us not doing premarital counseling and just not having the conversations that we needed to have about like what our expectations were of each other. You know what I mean? We just butted heads so much our first year of marriage because we had all these unspoken expectations that were just like the way that you're raised. So you expect your spouse to do exactly what your mom did or your dad did, or your traditions to go this way, or and it just led to so much conflict because we never had anyone ask us those questions before. So that's always my biggest piece of advice when people are getting married. I'm like, go to premarital counseling. Yes, because they just ask. It can be such simple questions like household roles. Who's going to take out the trash? Who's cleaning the house? Who's taking out whatever.
Me and Parker did one. Sorry to interrupt real quick while I was thinking about it. One of the questions was like, what are the hobbies that you have that you are envisioning you're going to do outside of each other? And he put for himself golf twice a week, and I put for him golf once every other week. And I was like, those are the things that you don't realize.
Right. Break it down to the frequency that it's happening. Yes.
I remember just dying laughing in premarital because I'm like, oh my gosh, I could see this becoming something, or me having this expectation and then him being like, let's go, I'm going to go golf twice a week. And I'm like, what? So even little things like that we got to talk about are when you are expressing your feelings, are you a hedgehog or are you a rhino? Like, do you just come at the other person when your feelings are hurt, or do you like hold up and like, I'm a hedgehog and he's definitely more of a rhino? So we're like,
I've never heard that analogy. Yeah, that's so funny.
I think about it often because I'm like, okay, I see this tendency in myself and I need to bring it to light. And that's what I've learned a lot about the beginning of marriage too, is okay, if I feel this way, I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to bring it to light, because if not, I don't realize I'm letting a seed fester in my heart that could grow into something so much more, even if it's as insignificant as like, oh, I want him to take out the trash, but I want him to do it without asking. Like that kind of thing. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, please proceed.
We went to dinner with the Hasselbacks, which they've gotten some airtime on this podcast because they just come up because they're
the best.
They're the best.
They're just the best.
We went to dinner with this couple that we're friends with, and the husband, Tim, is just like Davy and the wife Elizabeth is just like me. And I've never felt so seen. And one of the things, we were laughing the whole dinner because Davy loves having a clean house. I really, honestly, especially since having kids, I care a lot more. But I also don't mind like clutter like Davy does. Davy really minds clutter. And so it's been really good to have, it was really good to have this conversation because one of the things, this is just good marriage advice. She said, if I want Tim to tell me that I look pretty, I say, how do I look tonight? Or it would make me feel loved if you would tell me that I'm pretty. And that's such a small thing, but I'm like, there have been so many times, once I started asking Davy, like, how do I look? He'd be like, you look beautiful, obviously. And I'm like, well, it's not obvious because you didn't say it to me. He's like, well, I always think that. And so she was like, they're probably having the thought, but it's okay for you to remind them that you need to say it out loud. You need to hear them say it. Mm-hmm. And that's such a great piece of marriage advice. And it's like, you really can't expect anything of your partner if it hasn't been communicated that you expect it. 100%. That is just a great rule of marriage to live by. Because unmet expectations is what leads to conflict most of the time. And how is someone you can't read each other's minds.
Right. We were even with a couple last night, and we love them so much. And the husband was talking about being intentional about calling out your wife's gifts or the things that you love. Because you think, oh, you get married, like we've sealed the deal, we're good.
We've told each other while we're dating all the things that we love.
Yes, and then you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, have I told them what I love about them or called out a gift that I see in them that I feel like God so clearly gave them?
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of people get in this autopilot mode in marriage, and me and Parker are actively trying to combat that. I feel like to your question about married life and how it's been, first of all, it's been so much fun. I'm so grateful that we're now married. Gosh, I can't imagine waiting any longer and I'm only 22. But which is actually a miracle in itself, because Parker told me when we were 18, he's like, we're going to get married in college, or maybe we were 19. And I was like, LOL, I'm doing college for 4 years. I'm living with all my friends.
You can propose my senior year.
Right. I'm like, give me a ring by spring. We'll have this beautiful story. And then obviously that's not what happened. I still have a semester of college left, and we've been married for 3 months. So, but we have had so much fun together, and it's obviously exactly what God intended his timing to be. But, you know, we are like, oh my gosh, we just moved back to Nashville. We want to have couple friends. We want to get plugged into church. All these different things that we wanted to do. Well, a few months, maybe it was like 2 months into marriage, Parker got mono. And he doesn't get sick a lot. So when he got mono and was down bad, I was like, okay, this might be very clearly from the Lord that we need to create more margin. And then once we did, we realized also we have so much more intentionality in our marriage too. Like we have so much more intentional conversations. But you have to create that space, because you can get so caught up in all the good things, even though they can all be good things, but they might not be exactly what God wants you to do in those moments.
Yeah.
There's like discerning good from godly. And so we kind of had a little reset a few weeks ago of just like, let's have more margin. Because I didn't realize this. We went from playtime all the time, like being in college, having fun. Then we got married. This is so naive of me. But we got married, and then we both are like working all day, and we come back and we're both so tired. And I'm like, wow, I totally see how if you're not intentional, that some people can really just coexist with their spouse.
Yeah.
Because you could be passive and phone it in, but we are rejecting that. So we're really excited about that mission, and I feel like we've been intentional, and it's been so much fun.
Yeah, it's good to start that now before you bring kids in the mix.
Yeah.
Which was another question that people asked a lot was, when are they going to have kids? And I'm like, well, literally. If they don't get this birth control stitch figured out, it could be any time.
Yeah. Ideally, in our time frame, I mean, we might listen to this podcast in a year and laugh because God has totally different plans, but...
Because you've given birth.
Because I'm currently pregnant. I'm joking. That's not happening. That's not true. But ideally, we would have like 2 years just to be married before we have children. But also, this might be TMI, but I'm not on a medical form of birth control, so you never know.
Which is a whole other rabbit hole we could get on. I'm not either, which is why I've had 2 surprise pregnancies. Which is literally why I'm in the situation of having contractions while we record. But
what is your type? What is it called right now that you're in?
Prodromal labor. I've self-diagnosed myself with this, which this is kind of fun because this episode is going to release very soon after we record this.
Yes.
But I've been having contractions. I had like some Braxton Hicks, which is where, if you don't know, when you're pregnant, your stomach like tightens up, and they're kind of like practice contractions, but they don't hurt at all. They're just kind of uncomfortable because your stomach gets really tight and hard. I've been having legit contractions, like they hurt all the time. It is so constant. And I've never had that before. And so for the last few weeks, I've been like, she's coming a month early. What is happening? And then I was talking to a friend a couple days ago, and one of my other friends is also pregnant. And she was saying, yeah, this other friend that's pregnant has prodromal labor. And she started describing the symptoms, like it's constant contractions. They're way more intense than Braxton Hicks. They get stronger at night. And I was like, that's exactly what I have. I was like, 100%. But they don't mean labor is coming. So I'm like, because I was thinking, is labor, it has to be happening. Like the whole time at my baby shower, people were like, should you be timing these? Because I just started having them. But they're not consistent enough. And they're not getting stronger. They're not real labor contractions, but they feel like it. Anyways, yeah. So I'm just over here having prodromal labor until for the foreseeable future.
You're about to pop.
Yeah. It's so crazy. We're getting so close. I do feel like she might come a little early, but it's been really fun this summer. I had texted MillerAnne and Tuta and been like, can y'all help me over this summer? And Tuta's had a crazy summer, but MillerAnne was like, I'm graduating college. You're actually not graduating college. I'm leaving college, gonna graduate in December, but like doing online classes, I have margin to help. And so I've recruited her to help me with loved one stuff because we have our biggest event in September that is just a huge undertaking, and my brain is so foggy, which also has been funny throughout this podcast. This will likely be one of the last episodes that I'll release before I have baby girl, and then I'm gonna take a little break, rest for a sec, and then jump back in and really line up a lot of awesome guests, and it's going to be great. But I'm going to take like a little podcast maternity leave alongside my work maternity leave, so I can just rest for a second. But anyways, I recruited MillerAnne to help me with this season of work because my brain is not functioning. The fact that I've recorded podcast episodes with the pregnancy brain fog that I've had and the congestion. Yeah, that's a miracle. That is the miracle of the season. Yeah. And lucky for you guys who are listening, this congestion, it's not even congestion. It's just like my nose is just swollen. Goes away after I give birth. So you don't have to listen to me sniff into a microphone after this baby's here.
I haven't even noticed, to be honest.
Yeah, today it's not bad, but I've also very intentionally not been sniffing because some episodes are bad. But I'm like, God called me to it. If you're still sticking around and listening this many episodes in with my stuffy nose, then you're a real one. So, but yeah, anyways, we've gotten to work together so much this summer and it's been the best. It's been so good. And MillerAnne and Tuta both moved 4 minutes down the road from me and Davey, and they live around the corner from each other.
It's so fun for them. Which also, I feel like, I mean, it's public news that y'all are building a house. Yeah. And it's not over here. It's about 20 minutes away. And I feel like literally me and Tuta both bought our houses. Well, and our husbands, obviously. They honestly, I didn't even know we bought it. I got a text the next morning from Parker's parents. It was like, congrats, homeowners. And I was like, what? But Davey, Grace's husband, Davey looked at both me and Parker's and Tuta and Josh's houses without us even looking at it.
Because he's a realtor.
Yes, because he's a realtor. And we were like, let's send it. Me and Parker were in Auburn. We didn't even see the house in person. Tuta and Josh didn't either before they bought it. And I honestly feel like it is such a sweet little God wink, too, of just us all being close and me having capacity and margin right now to help you and serve you.
Yeah.
Because there's so much craziness and just a little God wink before you get sent off to the next area of Nashville.
Yeah.
That we get to do life this closely.
Yeah, I'm definitely a couple of things. One, I'm super eager to get to our new house, but I really feel like God was like, you've got a second, so here, I'm going to let your sisters move down the road from you. Mm-hmm. And we're the only 3 in our family that are married, so it's kind of fun to all be in that season too. But yeah, it's been so fun working together. MillerAnne is a freaking workhorse.
Oh, thanks, Grace.
You are. Anytime I have a project like decorating something, you just execute to perfection with the best attitude.
Thanks, Grace.
Yeah, so it's been really fun. So after we record this podcast, we're about to get to work.
Yeah.
For this event. I feel like we covered most of the things that people wanted us to talk about, and you just have such a beautiful heart, and I'm really proud of the way that with the platform that God's given you, the way that you're stewarding it, and the way that you're encouraging not just young girls, but you and Parker as a couple are encouraging young couples. It's just really cool to watch, especially at your age. And I've always said about you, like, you've always, like I said, been set apart, marched to the beat of your own drum. You've always been a leader, and you've always led really well. Me and Michael, I think we talked about this on our podcast. We've always laughed because, like, he's a leader too, but there have been seasons where mom has said, like, you're either going to lead all your friends to the cross or you're leading them off a cliff. And he would say, like, there's probably seasons that I have led people off a cliff, and that's just never been, and there is a story and a testimony to that. Like, his testimony is so strong in a completely different way than yours.
Yeah.
And just like people, I can speak to people about ways that I've fallen short that you haven't. There are ways that you've fallen short that I haven't. You know what I mean? Like, there's purpose to all of it. But I'm also just proud of how strong your conviction is. And you've just always, like, not been perfect, but stayed the course. And I look at now the people that God's given you to lead and speak over. And I think it's just because he knows he can trust you, you know, because you've shown that over the years. So
thanks for saying that. I feel so encouraged. It's definitely all him, because every day I'm like, Lord, so often I'm like, I have nothing to give today, so please fill my cup.
Yeah.
But thanks for saying that. That's really sweet. I, really quickly, just want to encourage you to, when I was growing up, even watching you in high school, I didn't see you in college. I was also like in 6th grade. But I watched the way that you live in high school, and so many times when I was in high school, I would always think, oh my gosh, what would Grace do right now? Like, because I knew that you lived set apart, and
thank you.
I looked up to you so much in the way that before Tuta came into the picture in our family, you led our siblings so well, and still do, in a lot of beautiful ways, and are just like pioneering this way too of being such an intentional mom and friend and sibling, and it's so beautiful to watch. And even just watching you step into this podcast with crazy, like, you just have so much going on, but you're obedient in the midst of it, I think is so admirable. And also, on the first podcast, when you said when you had been newly married, you had so much margin that you didn't realize it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the season that I'm in.
Yeah. So,
like, it's been so cool to be encouraged and be like, okay, well, what is God asking me to give him my yes in right now?
Yeah.
And so I've just been so encouraged too, watching you step into this. And
well, thank you. I had the thought before, like, you're so quick to say, and yes, you have margin, but this is also just your personality. Like, if you feel like you're supposed to do something, you just say yes and you send it. And I had the thought too, like, if I look around, I thought, God is calling so many different people in our family into awesome things. And I thought all of them are going to say yes and to step into all these things. And I'm going to be like, well, crap, I've just been sitting on this podcast and I look at everybody else around me saying yes to whatever it is God calls them to. It was almost like I had this feeling of, like, I just know that that's the path that everyone's headed down. And if I don't do it, I'm going to be kicking myself and just living in regret for the rest of my life because this is something that I know that I'm supposed to do. You know what I mean? And so in the same way, it's like you learn from me in that. That's something that I'm like, I know whatever God calls you to, you're about to step into it and crush it no matter what it looks like. And that was honestly a piece of, like, an encouragement to me to start this of, like, I can't be left behind and be watching everybody else live out what God calls them to do and me not do because I'm scared. So it's really great to surround yourself with people who are like that, who are like, yeah, whatever God calls me to. And I have friends who are like that too. Thank God. And it makes you want to do the same thing. You know what I mean?
Totally. Speed up or get past. Literally.
That's the motto.
I think about that all the time. I'm like, if I wake up and I have a day where I'm like, oh, I'm distracted in my time in the Word. I'm like, oh my, there's so many people who are devoting their entire lives to following Jesus. I gotta
speed up or get past. Yeah.
Literally, like, I'm not getting left behind.
Yeah, that's like a healthy comparison.
Yeah. The only type of comparison, and not like there's there's more significant.
Not like yours is less than theirs, but if you have the margin to.
Well, just. Yeah. I want to give God my yes. I know there's a lot of people doing it around me that are going to make a difference for the kingdom. And my desire is to build the kingdom. Yeah. So it's a good measuring stick.
Yeah, I say that about margin because when you're saying that, I'm like, my margin, if I compared what my quiet time right now looks like to what yours looks like, I would feel like a whopping failure. But it's the season of life that I'm in. But you think about that and it's like, okay, then what other ways can I supplement in my life so that I'm still staying spiritually healthy? Right. So that I am speeding up or not getting past, but like in a way that fits my lifestyle, not in a toxic comparison way. You know what I mean?
Also, spending time with Jesus for you right now doesn't have to look like a completely silent room.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
Right. Like, you have 2 screaming kids that are amazing.
That already wake me up at 5 a.m. Right. And getting up in the 4s when I'm 8 months pregnant is literally not happening. No shot.
Yeah, so, like, you can spend time with Jesus all day long. It just looks different. You know?
Yeah, we pray a lot.
And telling your kids, let's pray for patience for mommy.
Yes. Welcome, Nash. I don't know how he got up here, but anyways, that's a great note to end on. Yeah. This was so special. Thank you. You're welcome. I love you so much, and I know this will encourage people.